So we're going live. Okay, so we're live. So thank Robby for joining us for this last and being the speakers for our last session of the day. And welcome. So Robby, you're the CEO of Animoca Brands gaming studio, which is like one of the most innovative gaming studio here in the region. I mean, you're based in Hong Kong, and you definitely became like one of the best and one of the innovative.
Hi everyone. Sorry, I've had a little bit of a bandwidth problem there. So let me get started without further ado. Thanks, Stefan, for the introduction. I wanted to talk today just briefly about some of the things that we've been doing in blockchain gaming. We're a mobile game studio. We have been around for the last 11 years, headquartered in Hong Kong, as Stefan said. And for the last few years, we've really been focused on the intersection of blockchain technology and games. And this is something that some of you may be quite familiar with, and I apologize to those of you who are very current on blockchain games. But I think this is for everybody else for whom this is a relatively new topic, because the introduction of blockchain technology into games is something that's really only about 3 years old, and has really just started to gain a lot of momentum in the last 18 months. So to talk first a little bit about blockchain and gaming and why these two things we believe are kind of a match made in heaven. If you think about what the web is, the web for the last 25 years has been about downloading content. It's been a largely one-way medium where you get data, and that data, text, images, video, whatever, is able to be copied infinitely. Blockchain is different. Blockchain is about the transfer of ownership, because blockchain was originally created for Bitcoin. And the idea was that this was a cryptocurrency, and that you were going to transfer ownership from one person to another and do so in the most secure possible fashion. And so what happens when we think about this new paradigm of internet where it's about ownership transfer rather than copying data? The important thing is it becomes about value, right? It becomes about what can I exchange with somebody else of value, and this value also can be preserved because there can be authentication and uniqueness and security around it. One of the issues with the internet today is that anything you download, whether it's an image or a video, can be copied, it can be altered, and there's a sort of a preconceived assumption, right, that everything is infinitely copied, and so therefore one copy has no more value than another copy. So when we think about why gaming and blockchain go together, it's because many of the things that blockchain was developed for, security, digital ownership, trading of assets, right? Because when you want to trade cryptocurrencies, you're trading ownership of assets, and cross-platform capability. These are all things that actually are fantastic as pieces of infrastructure in gaming. Because when you think about games today, games are all about economies, okay? And so when you think about an in-game economy, it's about the transfer of digital assets. You invest in a game, you buy skins, you buy swords, you buy car parts, whatever it is in your game that you enjoy playing, you're spending money to buy those virtual assets. And so we've arrived, I think, at the intersection, which is called non-fungible tokens. Non-fungible tokens are a type of blockchain token. On the blockchain, you typically have two kinds of tokens, fungible and non-fungible. So fungible tokens are like Bitcoins, where they are all the same. So when you have a Bitcoin, I have a Bitcoin, we trade, we swap, we still both have one Bitcoin because they're all the same. Whereas a non-fungible token is a unique digital asset, meaning that it is marked as uniquely identifiable based on its cryptographic inscription. And so therefore, what you can do is you can create limited quantities of digital items that are authenticatable. So for example, I can create an image and have 50 of them and have a numbered edition like you do with artwork. 1 of 50, 2 of 50, 3 of 50. And only those 50 can ever exist because their provenance, if you will, is authenticated on the blockchain. So it's verifiable. And we see the perfect example of this in probably still the most famous and groundbreaking blockchain game, which is CryptoKitties from Dapper Labs. So CryptoKitties, the idea was very simple at the beginning. They liked cats, they liked pictures of cats, and so you can collect kitties, and the kitties themselves are unique. You can take the kitties and breed the kitties with other people who own kitties, and it's all about collecting and sharing and enjoying the ownership of kitties. But what was so innovative about this was it was a wonderful demonstration of what was possible with non-fungible tokens, because each of the kitties is in fact a non-fungible token. And for those of you quite familiar with blockchain, this was built on Ethereum using ERC20 and 721 standards, because those are, for the moment at least, the most widely used NFT standards within the blockchain game community. So why am I going on about gaming as this platform for blockchain technology? Because, as I said, gaming today is driven by virtual items and marketplaces for virtual items. So gaming used to be about set-top boxes and DVDs and games that were sold as prepackaged media. And in the last 10 years, gaming has really coalesced about being 100% online and nearly entirely based on the freemium business model. So even console games all have freemium business models associated with them. So people are spending money in them, and they've become games as a service. And so in order to continue that relationship with customers, game developers have to provide these platforms to sell digital assets. But there is a limitation, because each game developer is an island. So when you play your favorite game, you're basically beholden to the developer, because you must buy and sell everything. You must buy everything from the developer, and you're essentially only renting it from them. The content in the game itself only exists in the game itself, and you as the player don't actually own anything. You're just using it while you're in the game. Blockchain has the power to actually shift this dynamic to the users, because if the in-game items are tokenized as non-fungible tokens, that means that each of those swords that you buy, or cars that you buy in a driving game, or car parts, whatever it is, are actually owned by the user, and you hold it, and you can own it offline outside of the game environment. And that's very, very interesting, because what that does is that gives the player the opportunity to preserve the value of their investment in the game outside of the universe of that one specific game. And that, we think, is a game changer for how players are going to interact with video games. The other part of this topic that I'd like to talk about is IP. So for many of you who know us, Animoca Brands, as a mobile game development studio over the last 10 years, our real specialty has been in leveraging third-party brands for use in mobile gaming. We've spent a long time cultivating our brand relationships with everything from anime to film to toy companies to consumer brands, etc. And we work with those brands to create really memorable gaming experiences inside mobile devices. Now, leveraging that experience into blockchain gaming, we think, is a real asset, because if you think about the idea of investing in content where you can own content in a game, there's going to be an adoption cycle, right? Just like with every new medium. And so right now we're still in the early adopter phase, and we're thinking about how do we create content that is the most compelling content for people to own. What do they like to own? They like to own content in their favorite games, number one. So obviously you'd want to work with best of breeds game companies that have audiences who are drawn to those game brands. You know, think things like Angry Birds or, you know, World of Warcraft, you name it, you know, big game brands. But also you'd want to appeal to consumers through IP and brands that they know and love. And we can see that in gaming traditionally, a huge amount of game products leverage third-party brands. And we think that that's a great avenue to introduce players to this world of content ownership in blockchain games by offering it to them as branded content, because people like their favorite brands and they'd be enthusiastic about collecting content from those brands. So we work with a huge portfolio, as I said, of different types of brands. And the idea behind that is if you're going to have the opportunity to collect unique content, then you're more likely to be attracted to a brand you know. And, you know, think about fans who collect everything from stickers to notebooks and plush toys, whatever it is, collectors' memorabilia of their favorite brands because they're fans. And so we're appealing to those fan communities in this sort of nascent stage of blockchain gaming, because those are the early adopters. The fans are the ones that we want to appeal to. So let me give you a few examples of how we're doing this through different types of game experiences. So F1 Delta Time is a game that we're doing in our Hong Kong studio. This is under license with Formula One. And the idea here is to create a Formula One game experience aimed at Formula One fans, but with the idea of what's possible through blockchain technology and non-fungible tokens. So what we've done is we've tokenized all of the bits that you would use in a racing game, whether it's the cars, the car parts, the drivers, and they're all representative of the actual 2019 racing season. So this becomes a very exciting proposition for collectors and fans, because if you think about it, we can create very unique, rare cars that are based on reality and have value because, for example, you know, it was Lewis Hamilton's championship winning car. And so it has value because it was raced in certain key races. It has value because it has rarity in the game, and it's, you know, a one-of-one digital item or 1 of 10 edition digital item. And it also has value because of its utility. It's able to be used in the game and played with. So it's not just a collectible that's to be owned and admired, but it has a use case in the game as well. So we're building a racing game right now that's launching this summer. And up until now, we've spent a lot of time connecting with fans through building content sales. Because one of the things that's very important, as you all know, in building mobile audiences is creating that long-term fan community relationship. And so it's very important to us to see how best to connect with the fans and get them invested in the project and be as excited about the project as we are. And so one of the ways that we've done this is by holding auctions of very rare and collectible content in the game in the lead up to the launch of the game. And so this is done both for promotional value, obviously, because we can tell people about what's going to be happening in the game in the future, but also because it brings the fans in and makes them invested in what's coming in the game itself. And hopefully they will evangelize the game on our behalf as well to their friends, because we want everybody to be talking about it and to generate some buzz for the product when it finally launches. So another area to talk about is esports, and this is an example of esports and brands. This is our San Francisco studio. They've actually focused primarily on what we would call mid and hardcore titles, and most of these titles are done either in collaboration with brands. So here you see a couple of titles done with the Power Rangers franchise, and they're launched on a variety of platforms. So we just announced actually the first 5-platform game across everything: console, Nintendo Switch, Steam on the web, everything, mobile. And the idea is that everybody can play together. And we have actually benefited greatly from the last several months of people spending a lot more time at home because they're locked down in many countries. And we find that players of mid and hardcore games have a lot more time on their hands for which they can participate in esports and event gaming. Now, this is also very interesting when it comes to blockchain games and non-fungible tokens, because another way you can create value in those digital assets is through esports. So if you think about the example I used just now of Formula One Delta time, Lewis Hamilton's car NFT might have value because Lewis Hamilton won the championship driving that car. But in the case of Power Rangers Legacy Wars, for example, or Battle for the Grid, a particular Power Ranger character might have value not just because it's a Power Ranger, but because it was used in an esports event and won esports tournament. And so there might be that character or that character's swords or whatever it is that are imbued with value as a result of their participation in esports. Because, who as a fan of the game and a participant in the esports community wouldn't want to have a championship winning sword to take into battle for the next season, right? And so we think that this is very appealing to potential players because of the fact that this value can be created through esports. And let me give you another example. This is a company of ours based in New York that has a very vast platform and marketplace for digital collectibles. And again, the idea here is, how can we create those relationships with consumers? And we want to do that ideally through the brands that they know and love. Because when we work with those brands, those are the characters and the items that appeal to consumers because they have an existing brand relationship. And like any IP game relationship, for example, when we work with those brand licensors, obviously we're paying them royalties. And so I know a lot of game developers are concerned that there is going to be a big cost in terms of paying out royalties, because obviously it's much more profitable if you have a hit game based on your own IP that you create. However, our experience as a studio that's very focused on those kind of brand relationships is that I think that is a very reasonable trade-off, because although you are sharing your profits and your revenues with the brand owner in the form of license fees, what you get in return is very large, and you get actually I think a lot more what should I say, you have a much more predictable outcome, because the marketing of your product is going to be much more successful based on a brand that consumers know and love. You're going to have a lot more organic discovery of your product as a result. And so it creates a more sustainable long-term franchise and a lot less risk upfront and less investment upfront than building your own IP from scratch. So I'm not suggesting you shouldn't try to build your own IP, but for us, we found brand licensing actually to be a very effective strategy. The last example I want to get into is a non-branded for the most part, but it's about talking about users and how can we leverage these blockchain technologies in content experiences created by users. So one of our studios has called Pixel has a game called The Sandbox, and it's an open world game. And we think this is going to be a game changer, so to speak, for blockchain gaming, because it's an open world game similar to Minecraft and Roblox, where the idea is to encourage the players to be the creators of content. So we have a tool suite, the Vox editor, which allows players to create three-dimensional pixelized art or voxelized art. And in building the world, they are inhabiting virtual real estate, which is all on the blockchain. And then alongside that virtual world, we have a marketplace for content. And the marketplace for content is not just about players being able to buy content from us, but more importantly, players being able to buy content from each other. So that therefore, when you create great content in the game, you can also make it available for sale to other people. And so this is another example, I think, of something in the blockchain game industry which we're starting to call play to earn, which is an opportunity for people who are very avid game players and fans to actually monetize some of the time that they spend in games, because and give them a way to extract value from all that time they spend in games besides purely their enjoyment. And so I think this is something that really will change sort of the face of gaming, because we're allowing another avenue for people to engage in gaming as a professional opportunity, essentially. So in the game itself, you can create all this content. As I said, each of the content items becomes a non-fungible token and then can be traded or sold in the marketplace. So we think this is a groundbreaker. It's going live this year. Content actually has been being created in the marketplace since last year. We have a dedicated fund to help content creators, to incentivize them to create fabulous things. And then in the virtual space, we're working with a lot of best of breed. In the virtual world, we're working with a lot of well-known brands to create branded experiences and physical spaces inside the world, in addition to the ones that users create, so that there's a variety of places that you can go. So we think that this is very exciting and really represents the future of game experiences, because, as I said at the start of this, a lot of gaming is about the exchange of value and about creating an in-game economy. And so the idea that we can secure that in-game economy through the blockchain and empower the players to be able to buy and sell content amongst each other outside of purely just the platform of an individual game is very exciting, and we think will actually grow the pie for gaming tremendously. So I think that's pretty much all I had planned for today. And if anybody has any questions, then please, maybe we can go to Q&A.
It's a great presentation, and bringing blockchain to industry in general. I don't see any questions so far. I guess it was like very clear, or people are a bit shy asking questions. Few questions maybe, like what do you think is the biggest impact in terms of marketing when in regards to blockchain? I mean, you talk a lot about brands and IPs. Do you think it would impact mostly IPs based content? And what about hyper casual type of games with no content but still doing pretty well? What would be the impact of blockchain right there?
So I think in terms of IP, first of all, you definitely don't need IP because you can build great game experiences without IP and developing your own IP. We think the IP part is exciting mainly because it appeals to the early adopters. I think in hyper-casual experiences, it's possible that blockchain can be used for personalization, and that's a big area. If you think about, obviously Fortnite is not a hyper-casual game, but it did popularize in mainstream culture the idea of skins. So people everywhere now are aware of skins because of Fortnite, and you can have skins in hyper-casual games too. And so if you think about being able to bring that level of personalization with you from game to game, because you can bring your skin or your avatar or whatever environment that you like to play in with you, that's something that we can do with blockchain. Because one of the big areas of blockchain is that as long as us developers are working together and cooperating, you can then take your non-fungible tokens from one game to another game and use them cross platform in different games, because they're still adhering to the same token standard. So if you think about being able to take your CryptoKitties out of CryptoKitties and bring them into the sandbox and play with them there, that's something that actually has never been possible in games before.
Got it. Thank you. Also, blockchain can be like intimidating for people at some point. How much education do you think we will require, both on the end user side and the marketer side? Meaning, like, do you think it will take some time for adoption on the throughout the industry?
So I think at the moment, if you went out and played a blockchain game today, there is a little bit of a learning curve, because the onboarding of blockchain is not as seamless as mobile, for example. But keep in mind that mobile has had a decade to get it right. And don't forget that things like Angry Birds or Candy Crush did not actually come out in the mobile app store until 2-3 years after the App Store originally launched. So it does take time to make these experiences seamless. I think, though, when you combine the $150 billion game industry with a $100 billion blockchain industry, you get a very big pool of resources that is devoted towards onboarding and streamlining the experiences for users. So I think if you look at what a blockchain game looked like a year ago, and then you see where it is today, that would give you a lot of confidence that experiences 6-12 months from now are going to be, transformative compared to today. So I think the pace of change and the pace of progress that we're making is fantastic. So hopefully a year from now, you won't even know that you're using blockchain in the game. It's just going to be making your game better.
I understand. So does it mean like Pioneer, like Animoca would have to do a lot of handhold?
A bit. At this point in time, I think what we do is we try to work around that, and we try to just keep the experience
For the rest of the industry, or do you think it would come naturally?
I think we're trying to evangelize as much as we can. I think the most important thing for us is to let other developers know what a great opportunity we think blockchain is, and why they should be employing blockchain and NFTs inside their game experiences, because we want more developers to build content using NFTs and content ownership as their platform. We think that will make for a fantastic relationship between them and their players. So we just want to get the word out and to the development community, because we think that this is going to be the way all games will be a few years from now. So why not get in early?
Thank you very much for being the evangelist of blockchain and gaming. I'm sure you will have a lot of questions from people. I invite actually the people to contact you directly and ask you questions, and to interact with you, because I think it's also part of the future for our industry in one way or another. So thank you very much for this
No problem.
It was the last one for the day. Thank you very much for everyone and the team behind this Mobile Growth Summit. And thank you very much, and say bye-bye.
Take care. Thank you, everyone.